It's your host, Danny Haiphong. Thank you for joining me on this Sunday. It is really good to be with all of you. Be sure as you come onto this program that you're hitting the like button. That helps boost this stream in the algorithm. Of course, subscribe to this channel if you are new here and have not yet done so. Also, please do hit that notifications bell so that YouTube maybe perhaps sometimes notifies you that I am live. So it is good to be with all of you this Sunday. We have a packed show tonight. Please give me a sound check. Okay, a lot of developments just happening essentially over the last 24 to 48 hours. So please do give me a sound check really quickly. I'm just going to go over the program a bit. Okay, we're going to start with the political reshuffling in Russia. We're going to talk about here why Sergei Shoigu has not been removed or ousted, as the Western mainstream media puts it, but actually promoted. And there's been a whole lot of cabinet shuffling going on in Russia. Why is it happening? And what does it all mean? We're going to talk about that in the context of Putin's inauguration that happened earlier this month. It was a momentous occasion. Scott Ritter friend of the show, gave a great analysis of what that means. I'm going to put it all together because I believe Vladimir Putin's inauguration, his new term in office, actually has a lot to do with why we are seeing political reshuffling, especially as the Ukraine conflict comes to a head. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to get into what looks like an offensive in the Kharkov region. There's been news about villages being liberated by Russian forces. We're going to talk about what that all means. What does this mean for the conflict? Where is it all going? We're going to hear from a Russian war correspondent who was on DD Geopolitics not too long ago. We're going to hear from Mr. Andrei Afensayev, and we're going to talk about what's happening there. What can we make of this? And why is it politically significant and geopolitically significant, even as NATO continues to ratchet up the tensions as Ukraine falls further and further into a hole? Then we're going to close with China's Europe tour. Xi Jinping, the president of China, also the leader of the Communist Party of China, the general secretary of the Communist Party of China. He was in Europe. He visited France, he visited Serbia, and he visited Hungary. And we're going to talk about what happened there and what was the media conversation about this tour. It was an it was almost like a Western media onslaught trying to smear what happened, but the facts remain that Xi Jinping really elevated China's position in Europe in a very huge manner. And I'm going to talk about all of those details and where it's all going. So let us get started. Okay, hit that like button, hit that notifications bell. I'm just going to adjust myself a little bit. All right, hit that like button, hit that notifications bell, subscribe to the channel, of course. And if you are so able, please do go to the video description below and find Patreon as well as Substack, buy me a coffee, and so many other options to support this channel monetarily. Every cent goes back into the labor, into the technical costs, into the planning, into the assistance needed to run a channel like this, and it is all so very much appreciated. So let us get started. The Western mainstream media, NATO stan as Pepe Escobar calls it, is celebrating. They are clapping, they are cheering about the recent political reshuffling inside of the Russian government. This comes as Vladimir Putin assumes another term as president of Russia, his inauguration coming in the first week of May. And now we have many moves being made by the highest levels of the Russian government, including a replacement and a major change in Russia's military brass. So Sergei Shoigu, who has been subject to so many rumors, Initially, it was he was going to retire. Others were down on him, even on the pro-Russia side. Those who believed that Russia, has a very principled position on the Ukraine conflict. There are many who are down on him. The Western mainstream media have always leveled on these accusations about Shoigu's performance, all of the Russians that have died, so-called because of him. So Sergei Shoigu is no stranger to narrative spin and what it means to be at the top level of Russia's military brass. But he is no longer the defense minister. That is the big news here. He has been removed from that post, but he is now the general secretary of Russia's National Security Council. Not the win or the W that the Western mainstream media or NATO think that it is. But here is the report. Putin removed Shoigu as Russian defense minister, and Vladimir Putin has proposed Andrei Belousov instead. And this is big because Mr. Belousov is an economist, and I'm going to talk about why that's important. So President Vladimir Putin has proposed that Sergei Shoigu is replaced as Minister of Defense of Russia by acting First Deputy Prime Minister Andrei Belousov, as the Federation Council said on Sunday evening. Shoigu has been appointed Secretary of the Russian Security Council. Senators are scheduled to engage in consultations regarding the nominees put forth by the president during committee sessions on May 13th and during a Federation Council meeting on May 14th, as announced by the upper house of Russia's parliament. No further alterations have been made to the roster of candidates Putin has submitted for cabinet positions. His nominations include Vladimir Kolokotsev for the position of Interior Minister, Alexander Kharkov for Minister of Emergency Situations, Sergei Lavrov for Foreign Minister, so there's no change there, and Konstantin Chichenko for Justice Minister. All right, so that's the report, because the big news is that Sergei Shoigu is no longer defense minister. But there was more reshuffling that occurred. Okay, so not only this, but you had, and there's still not a lot of information about what happened, but you also had Russia's top security official dismissed. Former defense minister Sergei Shoigu will replace Nikolai Patrushev, who was the former secretary of the Security Council. Okay, so that's who. So Dmitry Peskov, spokesperson of the Russian government, said that Putin opted to assign a civilian to lead the defense ministry, citing the necessity for the agency to embrace innovation and progressive concepts. Peskov further mentioned that Shoigu, in his capacity as secretary of the Security Council, will serve as the president's deputy within the Commission on the Military-Industrial Complex. So it's not as if Shoigu is going to have nothing to do with Russia's defense ministry, with Russia's ultimate policy when it comes to military affairs. The Kremlin spokesperson added that Valery Gerasimov, the head of the General Staff of Defense Ministry, will remain in his current role. Peskov noted it will be revealed in the coming days who Nikolai Petrushev's successor will be after his departure from the position of Security Council Secretary. So we have Sergei Shoigu in, we have Petrushev out, okay? And there's no word about Petrushev's what's going to happen, but they did say there have been reports that he is going to take another position. It just hasn't been announced what that is. For those who don't know, Petrushev is known as a pretty hardline Russian nationalist. He is very much a staunch promoter and defender of Russia's sovereignty. He is someone that the collective West has been very weary of as a potential replacement for Vladimir Putin himself within the top brass of Russia's political class. And that's because Petrushev is a no BS defender of Russia's sovereignty. And that means that he is going absolutely nowhere. He will be somewhere in Russia's political sphere. It's just not so clear where yet. So now we need to talk about why this happened. Well, we don't have to pontificate why this is happening, why Sergei Shoigu is no longer the defense minister, why an economist, a political economist, is going to be taking over as the defense minister. Here is what Dmitry Peskov had to say about the decision to change defense ministers. Conflicts today are won by those who are open to innovations, said Dmitry Peskov. So Andrei Belosov would be the best person to deal with the issues facing the Russian military nowadays when it comes to economic needs, the Russian government spokesperson told journalists on Sunday. Earlier, President Vladimir Putin named the former first deputy prime minister as his pick for the defense minister's position. An economist by education, Belosov has long worked with the Russian government in various capacities, but had previously dealt with civilian matters only. He served as Russia's economic development minister between 2012 and 2013, and has worked as the president's economic aide between 2013 and 2020 before taking over the position of the first deputy prime minister, which he held until May 7th. When asked about the seemingly unconventional choice for the head of defense ministry, Peskov replied, "The battlefield is now dominated by those who are more open to innovations and ready to introduce them in the fastest way possible." The Kremlin spokesperson said that with the Russian military budget rapidly growing, it is important to integrate the economy and the military into the national economy. According to Peskov, the Russian military budget has grown from 3% to 6.7% of national gross domestic product, GDP, since the start of the conflict in Ukraine. It was not critical for the Russian economy, but the situation still started to resemble the late Soviet era when the Soviet Union's military expenditure rose to about 7% of GDP. Such a situation was extremely important and demanded an adequate response from the authorities, said Dmitry Peskov. Belosov is not just a civilian person, Peskov maintained, adding that he has proven quite successful at leading the Economic Development Ministry and worked as an economic aide for the president for a long time. The defense ministry should be absolutely open to innovations in the introduction of the most advanced ideas and creation of conditions favorable to economic competitiveness. So, Putin has proposed replacing Sergei Shoigu with Belosov. We're going to see if that actually happens, but it looks like it's going to happen. And this is very big. I mean, this is very big. And I'm going to put out a few ideas before we get to why this is going on and how Vladimir Putin's inauguration has laid the basis for these changes. But to put Belosov in there, an economist, in a time where Russia's economy is becoming more and more dominated by military production. This is just a fact of Russia's political economy at this point. It is one that has been necessitated by the Ukraine conflict. It was 100% necessary, and it is something that is actually benefiting Russia's economy dramatically given the GDP growth. But Russia is obviously seeing the writing on the wall. On the one hand, the conflict in Ukraine is going in Russia's favor. So it makes a lot of sense to shift toward an increased emphasis on how this ongoing conflict, which is not going to end anytime soon, or at least to uh, it's not going to be resolved fully given NATO's ultimate position. NATO will always be there, and I'm going to show you exactly why that is, given recent military exercises along Russia's border in places like Romania and Estonia. But nonetheless, having an increased emphasis on political economy makes total sense given Russia's increasing share of GDP going to military production, and also given the fact that Russia is in the driver's seat. It does not have to worry about political instability or even economic instability at this point, or military instability like in the conflict in Ukraine. It is a really shrewd move, and it's one that the collective West is going to have a hard time wrapping its head around, especially since all you hear about when it comes to Russia from the collective West is, look at that authoritarian government. Look at how much one person, the military, the so-called police state, right? They always talk about Russia as being this absolute police state, this authoritarian regime, quote unquote. But now you have a civilian as head of the defense ministry, essentially. Of course, he's been an economic aide, he's been economic minister. He is not a nobody, as Dmitry Peskov said. He is a professional. He is someone who has been critically responsible for Russia's economic success over the past decade or so. He's been obviously a key aide to Vladimir Putin in advising him on how to restructure Russia's economy, not just for this conflict, but over the course of the last 10, 15 plus years, where Russia has been able to get out of the decimation and obliteration and absolute devastation that the fall of the Soviet Union left in its wake when the collective West and, of course, the corrupt oligarchs inside of Russia collaborated for the wholesale theft of Russia's economy and, of course, to the detriment of millions upon millions of people. So, in effect, we have a massive change. We have massive changes happening. We don't know where Petroshev is going just yet. We have a lot of information that is going to come out about this over the course of the next days and weeks ahead. But what is clear, though, is that Vladimir Putin and Russia's political leadership is consolidating in a way that is that is already frightening the collective West. And why would it scare the collective West? It's because, as Victoria Nuland has lamented of late, that Russia's political leadership is not where the United States and is not where NATO wants it to be. It's not where they wanted it to be. They wanted a compliant Russia. They did not want Russia to turn into a sovereign state that is able to direct itself toward goals that serve its national interests rather than the interests of the collective West. And what are those? Well, it is to destabilize Russia. It is to break up Russia. It is to make Russia weak. And it is to plunder Russia like it did for those 8+ years following the fall of the Soviet Union. But Vladimir Putin was inaugurated just before these major changes are now being made. And I would argue that Vladimir Putin's inauguration is the foundation. His continued leadership, the stability of that leadership, is the foundation for why such political changes like Sergei Shoigu's replacement, why the political reshuffling happening in Russia is about increasing the stability and the progress of Russia rather than its opposite, which you are going to hear in the collective West media, mainstream media, for the days and weeks to come. So, Vladimir Putin was inaugurated the first week of May. This was the scene at the inauguration ceremony. We'll just listen to a little bit of this. Here you go.
Vladimir Putin. So the head of the state is now in Georgievsky Hall in all its splendor. The hall is named after the Saint Martyr the George, established by the order, was established by Catherine the Great in 1779. So Vladimir Putin is greeted by everyone invited to the inauguration ceremony. Government members, State Duma deputies, Federation Council members, judges.
So that's just a bit of a taste of his welcoming ceremony. Then we're going to listen to his speech, because I believe this part of his speech just underscores the powerful position that Russia is in. And this isn't me speaking as some kind of Kremlin spokesperson. This is me speaking the facts. Russia is in a position of power right now, and I believe that Russia's political stability is grounded in its vision for the world, for Eurasia. And here is Vladimir Putin articulating that to the entire country, demonstrating just how unified the country is right now around these key goals. Here's what Vladimir Putin had to say during his inauguration address.
We are open to strengthening good neighborly relations with all the countries that see Russia as a reliable and honest partner. And I'm speaking about the global majority. We do not refuse to engage in a dialogue with the Western countries. It is up to them to try to hinder the development of Russia, to go on with their policy of aggression, of the ongoing pressure on our country, or they will rather look for cooperation and peaceful relations with our country, to discuss strategic stability and safety. This dialogue is possible, but not from the standpoint of arrogance and exclusivity, but only by respecting the interests of each other. And we will work with our partners, with other sovereign centers. We will continue to work to establish the multipolar world order, the equal and indivisible system of security. In the world that is rapidly changing, we must be self-sufficient and competitive. We must open new horizons for Russia, as it happened throughout our history on many occasions. And we must not forget about the tragic price of all the inner chaos. So our system must be strong and resilient to any challenges and threats. It must ensure gradual development of one country, of the unity in the country. But we must not stop because we want to be stable. We must be flexible. We must continue to make progress, to move forward. We can see how the situation in the society is changing, how reliability, mutual responsibility, sincerity, honor, and courage are appreciated in today's society. I will make everything to make sure that the people who showed their best qualities, who proved how loyal they are to their motherland, took high offices in the country, in all the areas and in all the fields.
So, I mean, if that isn't a foreshadowing for this reshuffling, basically giving Sergei Shoigu, who, mind you, has not been disloyal to Russia, but is someone who has been rumored to wanting retirement before the special military operation, has been criticized at times for his performance, to give him this very comfortable position and move in someone who is about innovation, who is about the economic and military relationship of development that's happening inside of Russia. All of what Vladimir Putin said there, from being a leader in the multipolar world, cooperating and collaborating democratically with partners who are willing to do so, calling out the collective West for being the ones to create this situation of aggression, isolation, and then talking about how he is committed to making sure that progress remains the ultimate trajectory of Russia. Well, these moves that Vladimir Putin has just made, and of course the Russian government as a whole, because we cannot say just Vladimir Putin. There is a parliament. There is a process for this. These are Vladimir Putin's recommendations, likely to be passed because, well, someone like Belosov is very much worthy of taking a post like defense minister at this time. Russia is doing fine militarily. Russia is also stabilizing economically. Now it's about becoming innovative and moving even further ahead of where, of course, we're not even talking about the collective West because Russia's already beat those expectations, but Russia isn't playing for the collective West. Russia isn't doing anything for the collective West. It is doing what it's doing for itself and for its own interests, and of course, with that global vision for the multipolar world. So we're going to close now with what friend of the show Scott Ritter had to say about the inauguration, because I believe his analysis here is pertinent. Be sure to follow Scott Ritter because this is a Sputnik interview, a Sputnik segment he gave. Be sure to follow him, ScottRitterExtra.com, and support his waging peace campaign. But here is what he had to say about Putin's inauguration.
Vladimir Putin made it clear in his speech that he is seeking good relations with the West. Russia is not seeking to dominate anybody, but Russia wants to live in peaceful coexistence with its Western neighbors as an equal, as a nation defined not by Western values, but by Russian values. The thing that made this redefinition possible is this conflict with Ukraine. The special military operation has proven to be the final building block in this new structure of modern Russia, a building block that actually isn't at the top of the Russian edifice, but at the very foundation, a building block of patriotism, a building block that says that the Russians must defend their country. But to defend your country, you must know your country, you must love your country, you must cherish your country, you must be willing to sacrifice for your country. The special military operation has become the litmus test of what it means to be a Russian today. Literally, you're either for Russia or you're against Russia. And for Russians, this choice has been confronted and has been made. And Vladimir Putin is looking to these newly rebranded Russians, Russians who have not only said, we love Russia, but we're willing to sacrifice for Russia. We're willing to die for Russia. These new Russian heroes. This is the future of Russia. A Russia that looks to itself for motivation, that looks to itself for inspiration. And this is the Russia that Vladimir Putin is going to lead in the next term in office, an office that will redefine Russia in the final stages of this transformation that has been making continuously since 1999. A Russia that will, for once and all, purge the poison of Western malign influence out of its system and create a pure Russian notion of what Russia is. A Russia where Russians are proud to be Russian and proud of their president, Vladimir Putin. Vladimir.
So that is the segment that Scott Ritter gave to Sputnik. And I believe it's very fitting because what he said there about Russia entering the final stages of a transformation where it becomes truly sovereign and extracts Western malign influence from its political and economic trajectory. It is quite clear that these moves are this political reshuffling is part of that process. And that is not to say that Shoigu or Petroshev, far from it with Petroshev, are somehow part of this Western malign influence that Putin and the Russian government is still working on extracting. No, but it's about adapting and adjusting to the political conditions, the economic conditions on the ground. That is what Russia is doing for itself right now. It just makes absolute total sense that in this moment where the military in this ongoing campaign to defend Russia from NATO and the inevitability, it seems like, of a war with NATO sometime in the future, that is what Russia is trying to actually prevent. But along with this, having to do all of that, having to prepare for such a thing, having to engage in the Ukraine conflict, and also develop economically with over 16,000 sanctions leveled upon you, to be able to now not just get through that and survive, but to keep a pace with this beating of the odds, which Russia has done. Russia is now going to grow at a rate that is higher than essentially all of the European world, all of the major economies. Its GDP is growing rapidly, in large part because of the direction it has taken in these moves. Being able to move Shoigu into a position more comfortable for himself, being able to get Belousov in there to give his economic expertise to military affairs in a time where that is afforded. Russia has built that ability, has given itself that ability. And then, of course, finding a place for Petroshev where he can continue to to assert his hardline political and tactical and strategic vision. All of this means good things for Russia, rather than what the collective West and its mainstream media is going to say, which is, well, look, Russia is looking weaker than ever. Well, you heard Scott Ritter. You heard him. You heard his analysis. Russia is not weaker than ever. Russia is stronger than ever. Russia is charting an independent course, and the Russian people, in their many, many, many varying ethnic groups and political affiliations, they are becoming stronger than ever. They are coming out of this dark period, and they're doing so in large part because the collective West, because NATO, because of course the United States that lead all of them, that lead these vassals, they have essentially provoked this. They've accelerated it to a degree that could not have been predicted prior to February of 2022. So congratulations to the collective West. You have made Russia stronger. You have ensured that Russia's political class, its leadership, is not only as popular as ever, is not only able to do more than ever to develop the nation of Russia, but also what we are seeing is that Russia is becoming essentially bulletproof to all of the malign influence that the Western imperial apparatus, the collective West, try to throw at Russia, including propaganda. Nothing that the collective West says about these political changes mean a thing because Russia's trajectory is up in a period, a really difficult period in the world. We're going to continue to see Russia's influence increase worldwide. And we are going to see more political changes because Russia is looking more and more like that democracy that the collective West and the United States always talk about when they reference themselves. Well, Russia is able to make political changes. It's able to change its leadership. It's able to enact these kind of changes while still remaining true to those interests, those policies that people want. To me, that sounds like democracy, and Russia is further cementing its ability to call itself one. All right, everybody, that's the first story. And now we're going to get into, keep hitting that like button, keep hitting that subscribe button if you're new here, hit that notifications bell as well. We're going to get into the battlefield, the offensive posture that is being taken in the Kharkov region. We're going to talk about what this all means. Okay, so let me pull up what we're going to cover here because it's been just rapidly developing. It has to be covered now. So let's do this. Okay, let me just pull up the sources. Bear with me here. It's been quite a rough ride for Ukraine, to say the least. This is not how Ukraine was envisioning the conflict going, or at least uh, they were deluded perhaps in thinking that it was going to go better than this. But that's what Ukrainian leadership has been like ever since the coup. Okay, so we're going to talk about these drills too at the end because essentially what Ukraine is doing, what they are doing is they're destroying themselves. Ukraine, the government, the military, but they're also, of course, destroying the Ukrainian people, and that is what is the most tragic part of all of this. You know, especially as we're talking about genocide in Gaza, especially as we're talking about just the threat of nuclear war. It is just, you know, it's just never, it's never something that can give you much joy and pleasure to see a government so controlled and dominated by a foreign entity, an imperial entity like the United States and like NATO, and just watch it basically take a chainsaw, not just to itself and to the people of Ukraine, but also to the region, to the world. But luckily, Russia and the multipolar world are not letting that succeed. So, let's get to the story, shall we? Here we go. Let's do this. Keep hitting that like button. Okay, hit that subscribe button, hit that notifications bell, and we are going to get started. There have been talks of a major offensive coming. I've had people like Scott Ritter on the show, friend of the show, former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer, UN weapons inspector, talk about his sources telling him that there were major changes coming on the battlefield that Russia was going to facilitate to essentially get on the road to ending this conflict. And of course, this conflict has been going on for many years. Since February 2022, there's been a lot of difficulty in assessing what is actually happening. But now we have pretty good proof that Russia is doing a major, or at least building on and launching a pretty a big offensive. I wouldn't call it a huge red arrow offensive, but it is a significant offensive in the Kharkov region, and it is actually yielding results. So here is the reports, okay? Russia takes more settlements in the Kharkov region. This is from the Ministry of Defense. Ukrainian troops have been driven out of 4 villages over the past 24 hours. This was as of May 12th. Moscow's forces have moved deeper across the Ukrainian defense lines in the Kharkov region and have made new territorial gains in the area, said Russia's defense ministry. The villages of Gasisha, Krasno, Marakovets, and Olyanukovo have been liberated from Kiev's forces. As you can see, I am not Russian, and apologize to all the Russians who had to hear that, or all the Russian speakers who had to hear that. The ministry said on Sunday in its daily bulletin. Over the past 24 hours, the Ukrainian military has lost 1,500 troops along the front line. 1,500 one day. That's a staggering amount. On Friday, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said that Russia launched a large-scale offensive in the region, claiming his country's forces had calculated everything in advance and were preparing to repel the attack. Zelensky's statement, and were prepared, I said preparing, which was probably more accurate given they did not repel anything. But Zelensky's statement was said that they propelled the attack. That's what the mainstream media went with. And this followed the announcement from Moscow that several villages were captured. The fighting continued near the settlements of Dektyarnoye, of Volchansk, and Kazachaya Lopan. So we're going to talk about Volchansk, with the Ukrainian military losing up to 100 troops, 2 tanks, 2 Cossack armored vehicles in the area. It also reported that a French-supplied Caesar and 2 Czech-made Vampire multiple rocket launchers were among items of Ukrainian equipment destroyed by Russian counter-battery fire in this instance. It said that Ukrainian forces had suffered the most casualties in clash with Russian forces over the strategic town of Chasiv Yar and nearby villages in Donetsk People's Republic in Russia. Its losses in this area amounted to 620 servicemen, 2 tanks, a UK-made AS-90 Braveheart self-propelled gun, an American M777 howitzer, and other hardware, Moscow said. The Russian military also hit other Ukrainian forces in settlements of Maersk, Ivagonovka, Vadanoye, and Semenovka, located west of the city of Donetsk. Here, Ukraine lost 450 servicemen, 2 tanks, including a U.S.-made Abrams M1, an American Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, a Cossack armored fighting vehicle, and a U.S.-supplied Paladin self-propelled howitzer. In May, Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu confirmed the country's military had switched to an offensive posture, stressing a steady supply of weapons and ammunition was needed to maintain peace in the advance, and Sergei Shoigu is soon to be the former defense minister. So in a separate comment, Shoigu had said that since the beginning of the year, Ukraine had lost 111,000 troops. 111,000 troops since the beginning of the year. Absolutely staggering. So now, I just want to show you there were other forces that were talking about this, making these announcements. So here you have a map. This was the initial report that I saw from Alex Olayede, who is based in Russia. Says the northern group of the Russian armed forces have begun the offensive in the Kharkov sector. The village of Borisovka has fallen to the troops, our troops. So our troops, Russian troops, are making their way to the capital of Kharkov, joining up with the Lugansk People's Republic forces in the east. And so there you see the map and where all of this activity is happening. And as you can see, this is a very important region, Kharkov. We're going to hear from a Russian war correspondent in a second. But one of the reasons why it's so important for Kharkov to be liberated again, is because, well, you have things like this. So Kharkov, there's a border that leads into the Belgorod region in Russia, and there's constant attacks. The recent one here on a residential area where over 20 people have been injured. I believe that number is probably going to go up as this has just happened. The remains of 7 persons have been taken out from under rubble of a multi-story building that collapsed following a Ukrainian missile attack. And the mainstream media was absolutely disgusting with this. They claimed that it was Russia's fault this happened. They claimed that Ukraine's strikes had nothing to do with it. Absolutely egregious to claim this, given that Ukraine has been striking Belgorod basically since the beginning of this conflict, and they've escalated as Ukraine has become more desperate. So the investigative committee is working at the site alongside rescuers who suspect more people are under the rubble. So Gladkov, the governor, mentioned that while he was inspecting damage, he was disturbed by yet another alarm warning of rocket danger, which was set off in Belgorod and the surrounding district. Together, rescuers and volunteers, we went to the basement of the Luch Sports Complex to wait it out and start working again. He said 20 people have been hospitalized after the incident. And according to the Defense Ministry of Russia, Ukraine attacked residential areas of Belgorod using a Tochka-U tactical missile, as well as Ulka, an RM-70 Vampire multiple launch rocket systems. The ministry asserted that Russian air defenses intercepted 6 Soviet-era Tochka-U missiles, 4 Vampire rockets, 2 Ulka projectiles. It was mentioned that fragments of one of the downed Tochka-U missiles had caused damage to a residential building in Belgorod. So that's what you have. You have Ukraine launching at civilian targets, all right? And this is important because it means that liberating Kharkov is not only a key component of the special military operation of denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine, it is also a key component of just protecting, and these are connected, right? Protecting Russia's national sovereignty and Russian people. So here is, so on DD Geopolitics, Ossie Kosak interviewed Andrei Afanasayev, and here's what he had to say about the Kharkov offensive and what it all means.
Taking Kharkov is very important because it is one of the biggest cities of ex-Ukraine, and it is a huge industrial city, and it has been a base for a lot of nationalistic and radical battalions of Ukrainian armed forces. I can tell you now that according to my sources in the Donetsk direction of the front line, now we are having a very important news from there. Everyone is looking and following the situation in Kharkov zone. Of course, it's very important. But according to my sources, and this is exclusive for your show, our military forces, Russian military forces, managed to perform several breakthroughs of the front line in Avdiivka zone, getting deep into the territory controlled by the Ukrainian forces. We all know that breakthrough of the front line is very important and is crucial. One thing is pushing the front line for 2, 3, or 5 kilometers, and another breaking through, cutting the front line and getting to the flanks and to the back of the group of military of your enemy. So this is what is happening now in Donetsk. Also, I would be looking closely to what is happening in Dnieper. Probably soon in Kherson region in Dnieper, it will be performed the breakthrough the river, and we will storm the river and get on the other side, on the right bank of Dnieper, moving closer to Kherson, Nikolaev, and eventually Odessa. So I think that this is my personal, humble opinion, so to say, that what is happening in Kharkov is crucial and important, but it is just one part of a huge, even bigger military strategic operation that is underway and is not covered yet. I can tell you that our leadership has made a very clear and deep and strategic decision that we do not cover our results, our military results, till the operation is finished. We were not covering the details of Avdiivka operation till Avdiivka was totally liberated. And
so this is a key point, and this is so true. There is no way, and you hear Scott Ritter on my show and many others say this, Pepe Escobar and others have said this. You will not know what is going to happen, how this is going to all turn out. We can only analyze the situation from where it is and what is in front of us right now and what the Russian military is doing right now, because there is no foreshadowing. There's none of this, hey, there's an offensive coming. There's a vaunted counteroffensive coming for 6 months. You're never going to get that. That's what Ukraine did. That's what the United States did. That's what NATO did, because they're not really interested in anything other than these horrific, self-interested, narrow objectives for this conflict. But Russia, because they're interested in winning, they're interested in these very clear principles: demilitarization, denazification, and of course, the sovereignty, safety, and self-determination of Russia. They are not going to foreshadow anything. So I think that's a really important point.
and under our control. Because in current situation, open source intelligence makes the most. And a lot of military correspondents, my colleagues, a lot of military bloggers, and just information in media and social media can help the enemy to make better decisions based on this open source intelligence. So now we don't cover at all the details of operations till they're finished. I'm just telling you that what is happening now in Donetsk and probably in Dnieper is even more important. And Kharkiv part of it is just to concentrate the attention of both the West and the Ukrainian community and even Russian community for a while, when the other part of the front line is always moving, burning, and we will be getting enormous news from there soon.
So that was the report there, and I wanted to pull up. Be sure to follow DD Geopolitics on YouTube and on Twitter. Just follow DD Geopolitics. Search all of that, one word. But I wanted to pull up Sputnik's report that Chasiv Yar, the Donetsk People's Republic in the Donetsk region, will be liberated. So this is what the Russian war correspondent, Mr. Andre, was talking about. He said that this is a really important arena and there's progress being made here. This is just one part, the Kharkov region, one part of this equation. The liberation of Chasiv Yar will have military and political importance, virtually ending Ukrainian occupation of the Donetsk People's Republic, a very key goal of the special military operation, and dealing a psychological blow to Kiev's regime's troops. So the head of the DPR, Denis Pushilin, told Sputnik that he is optimistic about the advance of Russian forces toward the city of Chasiv Yar and that Russian fighters have already penetrated the city's boundaries. You know, at this stage, the Russian Defense Ministry is providing all information in full, taking into account the possibility of providing information to the public without harming our units. I will tell you, I'm optimistic about the way our guys are organizing their actions, even within Chasiv Yar, but we'll be careful not to do any harm. I can say that Chasiv Yar, of course, will be liberated. Political analysts explained to Sputnik that Chasiv Yar is key to ending Ukraine's occupation of the Donetsk People's Republic. The town has served as a key logistics hub for the Ukrainian army since 2014, and its elevated location offers control of the surrounding area for many miles. However, the liberation of Chasiv Yar will also be deeply politically significant, since it was earlier described by Zelensky as an impenetrable fortress. Capturing the city will deal another blow psychologically to the troops, lowering the morale of Ukraine. So that is what is happening. And Kharkov is, of course, a big part of that. And we can see that morale lowering in what is going on as we speak. There is a major battle happening in Volchansk in the Kharkov region. Russian troops are surrounding the city. Ukrainian armed forces commanders are reporting. And just this report is absolutely wild because it just shows how dire the situation is for Ukraine. They're not okay. Ukraine's military, the Ukrainian armed forces are not okay. There's virtually no line of fortifications Ukrainian military claims. In addition, it is reported that 125th Territorial Defense Brigade fled from their positions. And just look at this narrative. I'll read it. It might be a little small. I can zoom in as much as I can. So this is what this is the commander. This is a commander in the Ukrainian armed forces, Volchansk. Difficult today strike aerial reconnaissance of the 1st SB 57th Brigade stopped the advance of Storm Z, but the enemy is drawing up reserves. Street fighting began. The city was surrounded. I say this because we could die and no one will hear the truth. Why then everything? The first line of fortifications and mines simply did not exist. The enemy freely entered the gray zone along the entire cordon line, which in principle should not have been gray. And meanwhile, there have been videos. They're not very good quality, so I'm not going to show them, of this happening, of literally Russian forces just marching into this region that's supposed to be heavily fortified, and they're just walking up to this line and searching for they're searching for the enemy. In 2 years, there should have been concrete fortifications at -3 floors on the Ukrainian border, and there weren't even minutes. We come to the conclusion that this is either insane theft or deliberate sabotage. Now we are again losing people, territories, and doing what we already did in September 22nd. I know that 125 TROs who abandoned their positions already, and that they were forced to sign acts of acceptance and transfer of fortifications that were not even 30% ready as completed construction. I hope that those responsible will be punished. Live, everyone. So essentially, desperation in Kharkov. Obviously, Russia is on the offensive, and here is the desperation is so grand that Ukraine is just this is when you start losing the propaganda war, that's when it is quite clear that your position, your situation is just untenable in all levels of war, because politics is an extension of war by other means, and propaganda is not something to judge. It is a part of war. If you are at war, there's going to be propaganda. You need to win the information war, because you need morale high, you need support publicly, globally, etc. And this is just not it. So the first T-14 Armada was destroyed using U.S. supplied Photoshop system. Again, this is from DD Geopolitics, and here is exercises in 2023. So it's a Photoshop. It is completely Photoshop. This has nothing to do with the battlefield. They're saying that they essentially just photoshopped all of these details in here. Nothing nothing was destroyed. This is just how Ukraine has talked themselves up, right? They're posting pictures, so-called, of Russian military equipment, saying they destroyed it, and they did no such thing. And that's because they're not able to take out Russia's military industrial complex at this time, because they don't really have anything to take it out with. You heard the Ukrainian commander. He was absolutely livid about how desperate the situation is. They're so desperate, they're using Photoshop to try to convince themselves that they are winning. And this is all at the behest of NATO. And meanwhile, you would think NATO would be rethinking, right? If you are at all rational, if you believe that war is not simply just a forward motion project, that perhaps it's time to scale back. And that's been the conversation for those months and months it took to pass the recent Ukraine aid bill. It took months and months, 6+ months, to pass $60 billion+ to support Ukraine. Now the U.S. is trying to push $400 million into Ukraine. But of course, the United States, NATO knows it's not enough. So you would think, okay, well, it's time to pull back. It's time to focus on other things. Well, the overall project, this is why I always say that no matter what happens with Ukraine, NATO's trajectory is not changing when it comes to Russia and these war games. NATO, as Ukraine is flailing, you have British, the UK, leading dramatic war games in Estonia, in the Baltics, on Russia's border. As NATO seeks to counter a Russian threat, quote unquote, we are ready to fight. Okay, so this is what's happening as Ukraine is so desperate, as the assistance they're receiving from the West is doing nothing to assuage the situation, to ensure that things improve for Ukraine. NATO is engaging in war preparations with Russia. And so here's just the report. Apache helicopter gunships carry out strafing runs in support of troops on the ground, storming Russian positions. A series of fortified trenches have been cleared in fierce close-quarter combat, and a counterattack repulsed with the use of drones and missiles. The mission, swift response, is being carried out by British-led forces in Estonia as part of NATO's biggest military exercises since the end of the Cold War, ranging from the Baltics to the Balkans. It comes amid an increasingly heated confrontation with Moscow following Vladimir Putin's so-called invasion of Ukraine. There have been repeated warnings from opposing sides, NATO and Moscow, of a potential conflagration. What is unfolding in Estonia are opening salvos of what a modern conflict between great powers would look like or be like, with the Western alliance making a stand on the eastern flank. The stakes cannot be higher. President Putin has raised the possibility of nuclear weapons being used several times as he ratcheted up rhetoric of warnings to the West since the start of the Ukraine war. The NATO response appears to be prepare for the worst, hope for the best, while watching what the Kremlin does next. So what's so interesting is, does this look like the West just preparing for the worst, hoping for the best? No, this is not that. This is NATO in an offensive posture, literally training for war with Russia on Russia's borders. No matter how many times Russia has said, we can go back years, over a decade now, warning about NATO encirclement, warning about NATO's prior commitment not to move another inch eastward, all the way up until 2021 December, where Russia was trying to assert its security interests and get an agreement that was mutually beneficial for all sides. That was a major compromise to prevent Ukraine from turning into a conflict like it ended up turning out to be. Then of course, we can go back to the Minsk Accords 6 years before that, 7 years before that. So we can go on and on and on about all the attempts by Russia to prevent conflict with NATO. And here's NATO literally training on Russia's borders during the Ukraine conflict, as Ukraine is desperately holding on to the last bits of life that it has on the battlefield, as the United States and NATO are literally just giving Ukraine enough to exist, as their forces and their manpower gets decimated, their military equipment gets decimated. It doesn't matter. What they're doing is they're just feeding this constant cycle of death and destruction in Ukraine. And now they are looking to do it. They're looking to extend that death and destruction. Of course, the Baltic states, these former Soviet republics that have since been turned into what Pepe Escobar would call chihuahuas, they are more than willing to destroy themselves at the behest of NATO, because that was the vision that NATO had when it decided to continue to extend eastward toward Russia's border after the fall of the Soviet Union. Standing on a muddy field in Nurmsi in northern central Estonia, 2-hour tank drives from the Russian border, Brigadier Giles Harris, the commander of British forces in the Baltic, has no doubt of the imperative of dealing with the clear and present threat from the Kremlin. It's very urgent, he said. I'm not going to second guess what may or may not happen, but as military personnel, our job is to be ready. There's no point waiting to be ready. We should get ready now. And what's playing out in Ukraine provides us with lessons we need to learn. Our mindset is, regardless of whether it's today, tomorrow, next year, we must be as ready as we can. We must make ourselves as ready as we can. We are prepared to defend every inch of Estonian land if necessary. In the minds of the soldiers, the strategic purpose and context in which we are doing this training has definitely changed from regular exercises. The fact that we are doing this so close to Russia brings home why it's so important to be here. I mean, this is literally warmongering insanity just being published in the pages of The Independent for us to ingest and pretend that this is normal, that this is something that's desirable. They are literally promoting a world war, a nuclear war in your face, as they are provoking it in Ukraine and saying that it's because of Ukraine they need to do this, that these exercises are no longer just regular military exercises. In my opinion, they never were. But More than 90,000 troops from all 32 member states are taking part in exercise Steadfast Defender, of which swift response is a part in the drills, including air assaults, maneuvers, armor maneuvers, and fire support taking place in locations including Estonia, Sweden, Poland, North Macedonia, Romania, Hungary, and Moldova. Brigadier Mark Berry, a commander of the 16th Assault Brigade, in which the parachute regiment is a leading part, wanted to stress the exercise was not just a show of force. I don't consider any of the activities my soldiers conduct ever as a show. My role is to make sure that soldiers have the right training opportunities and feel ready and prepared to work together with allies or on their own. We, of course, send messages to whoever will listen. We want to make clear that our forces are ready. They're capable of working with each other in any specific time frame. When we are training, we're looking for lessons from conflict zones anywhere we can get them. So they're talking about the training getting as realistic as it gets. And all of this is just to prepare for war. So they're literally telling you they are dramatizing war with Russia, preparing for a war with Russia, even as, can you believe it? Even as Ukraine is essentially on its last legs, that this Kharkov offensive is just one part of a front line that is collapsing. Russia is on the move everywhere. NATO, the United States, whatever it is giving in this aid package, from the $60 billion aid package from the United States to whatever NATO can throw at Ukraine, it's quite obvious that it is not going to be enough. These movements are happening on the front line now. And NATO is in Estonia right now talking about, we are going to defend Estonia. We're going to defend the Baltics. We're going to defend all of the territory essentially along Russia's border against Russia as the pretext for preparing for war with Russia, which is really a war on Russia. This is the reality behind the spin. So what we are essentially dealing with is a rabid, out of control war machine that is looking to escalate a completely dangerous situation that already exists in Ukraine. It's not just going to be Ukraine. When Russia is victorious in Ukraine, it will, of course, change the geopolitical calculus in favor of Russia, but that doesn't mean NATO is going to stop its offensive posture towards Russia. I think that we're going to have to look at the reality differently as it exists right now. Just like we can't predict how Russia's military is going to operate in any given moment to the next on the front line, we also have to understand that we also can't predict how NATO is going to react to a rising Russia. We can, of course, predict the overall posture. We can see the lessons of history, but we cannot say that, well, when Ukraine fails, NATO is just going to pack it up and they're going to stay in their lane, not move another inch eastward, not provoke war with Russia. All of that would be naivete. They are training right now along Russia's border as Ukraine is crumbling. And that should give all of us pause. That should give all of us the instructions we need to know, to understand that Ukraine is just part and parcel of an overall policy of the U.S. empire, of NATO stand, as Pepe Escobar would call it, to destabilize Russia. It will fail. It will fail. It already is failing. But that doesn't mean there won't be wars, there won't be death, there won't be destruction, and there won't be the threat of nuclear catastrophe, which, as history shows, the collective West has been the purveyor of, has been the leader of, has been the force that has not only used these weapons, but has created an environment where these weapons are such a danger to humanity, has caused the needs for deterrence, for nuclear deterrence among other countries like Russia, China, the DPRK. We can go on and on and on. It is the United States, it is NATO that is the problem. That isn't being a Russian agent, that isn't being a Putin puppet, that isn't being some kind of spokesperson for the Kremlin. That is just being truthful. The proof is not in the pudding, it's in the facts, it's in what's happening right now. So we all need to wake up, and we need to be preparing for the worst, but fighting for the best, waging Peace. So that's it for the story on the Kharkov offensive. We have one more story tonight. We're going to talk about Xi Jinping's visit to Europe. Okay. We're going to talk about that. It actually has a lot. Stick around. A lot of people like to leave during the China story. I'm calling all of you out. Stick around because it is actually quite entertaining, to be honest. Whenever China is talked about in the mainstream Western media, it's so laughable. It's almost like it's almost like one big running joke. Because if you think that the pearl clutching and the panic and the absolute pathetic groveling and fear that's coming out of the collective West leadership at the moment is bad when it comes to Russia, oh man, with China, it is extreme. It is intense. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into, in particular, the trip that Xi Jinping took to Europe, because it was a very significant one, okay? A very significant one indeed. So let me pull up the stories, okay? Because there's a lot of stories to mull through on this one. All right. Actually, this is a little annoying because when I pull them up, they're getting out of order. So bear with me here. Bear with me here. Bear with me here, okay? Here we go. I already pulled that one up. Okay. Here we go. Sorry about that. Let me actually keep going. Let me just keep pulling up these stories because I want to go one by one by one. I want this to be smooth. So give me a good minute as I pull this up. All right. I think we're about ready to begin now. All right. All right, everybody. We still got 4,200 people watching. Please continue to hit that like button. I saw about 500 of you leave because obviously you're not interested in China. That's a shame, but your loss. Everyone who's here, it's always a good time to just watch the complete and utter crumbling of the collective West when it comes to China. Okay, so here we go. Xi Jinping began the month of May with what truly was a historic tour in Europe. It was his first trip in over 5 years to the continent because of both COVID and, of course, the worsening relations between China and Europe that have taken place because of the US's influence. But Xi Jinping made a huge statement by choosing a very specific set of countries to visit, sending a really devastating message to the United States. Who were these countries exactly? Well, it's France, right? What many view as both a US puppet as well as a kind of malign actor in Europe, saying one thing, doing another. Emmanuel Macron being one of the most unpopular leaders, but one that China has seen as sufficiently weak enough to steer potentially in a direction favorable to China and the multipolar world. Then he headed to Serbia, where the relations between Serbia and China were elevated to the community for a shared future for humankind, the highest level of partnership that a country can have with China. And he visited, Xi Jinping did, on the anniversary of NATO's bombing of Serbia in May 7, 1999, which killed 3 Chinese nationals. It was indeed something, a message to NATO, which drove the West mad. And then he ended the trip in Hungary. One thread throughout this trip is that economic deals were inked. Over 70 economic deals were inked between the 3 countries, 30 of which reside with Serbia. But we are going to start with the fact that as Xi Jinping was in Europe, the United States was trying to undermine this by provoking China militarily. So the Philippines was one area, but then of course you have things like this where China's military is confronting U.S. ships in the South China Sea. The U.S. Navy said a destroyer, the USS Haley, was exercising navigational rights near Parcel Islands, even though the Parcel Islands are nowhere near the United States. So there's absolutely no, it doesn't matter. You can't question claims. It's absolutely ridiculous. And China said this violated their sovereignty. But I want to show you, because the United States always claims that it's China being aggressive, but they never show the full map, okay? And I'm going to show you exactly why it is ridiculous to say this in the context of this European trip, because here you have Peter Cornell saying, before AUKUS, consider which came first. Was it Obama's pivot to Asia, blowing up much in the Middle East, concentrating military might in Asia with one specific objective, or China moving to build islands in the South China Sea and installing defense posts on them? It's not B. Just look at that photo. That is from Sky News itself, talking about the Indo-Pacific. This was a program on China being the military threat. But look at all those bases and military installations, hardware surrounding China from Australia all the way through the South China Sea, surrounding the Taiwan Straits. This is the real situation. This is what they don't want you to know. And this is what the United States always builds up and tries to provoke even further and escalate when China is doing something like it was doing in Europe. So you have China undermining the US's emphasis on military and on war by essentially waging a stronger position economically and diplomatically in Europe. So it started in France. And mind you, it didn't necessarily start off. It did start off amazingly, all right? Because, well, Xi Jinping received a pretty warm welcome in France. There was a whole welcoming committee. It was more impressive in Serbia, and I'm going to show you that. You had a constant barrage of media attempts by the media to frame this as absolutely unproductive. So here was the Financial Times saying that Xi Jinping's unproductive European tour, China's president gave few concessions and signaled his authoritarian worldview. So when he last visited Europe in 2019, he put a charm offensive with lofty ambitions. He signed commercial deals in Paris, celebrated Rome's participation in the Belt and Road, and made bold promises for economic cooperation in Greece. His tour this week takes place under radically different circumstances, talking about eroding support, conflict in Ukraine, and all of that. And then consider his itinerary: meetings with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who was not invited. So we're going to show you that she was not someone that Xi Jinping was saying, okay, we're going to meet. She forced her way into the meeting with Emmanuel Macron, and then you just have to see the media reports about this. Harken back to Beijing's former charm offensive, small concessions on threatened Chinese tariffs on French cognac, but much of Xi's trip has been spent embracing Chinese allies that are troublesome members of the European family, like Belgrade on the 25th anniversary and Hungary. So you see how they automatically target. They move from France and they say that China was essentially targeting European enemies in the European family. Some democracy the European Union is, huh? This just makes China look much better because now we are seeing what Europe really thinks about its own partners. But the truth of the matter is you just had this constant offensive. Just look at the things that these hawks, these anti-China hawks, like Joel Atkinson, who is this? Who knows? Some washed up fool who supposedly researches and teaches international politics in South Korea. He tried to claim that Xi brought Wang Yi and Hua Chunying for support. Do you see this manipulated photo? Well, look at the comments, okay? Because we have to look at the comments. Why did Macron need Ursula von der Leyen as support? Look at this crew that Macron brought with him. It looks like Xi Jinping's crew is a lot smaller than Macron's crew, but then that would mean acknowledging that these pathetic attempts at smearing Xi Jinping's tour are nothing more than a smokescreen for why it is France and the EU that's in the weak position here. But here is a funny one from Jiao Shui. He says, the true character of a person are found in the details. President Xi has a stopwatch in front of him during the meeting with French President Macron. Strict, no nonsense, punctual, not a huge fan of small talk, at least not with van der Leyen and Macron. Look at the watch. She circles the watch. So this is all just to set the stage for the mood when it comes to France. Now, here we have to just underscore the fact that Xi Jinping came into this meeting with really good intent. I mean, really sincere intentions on fostering better relations. He had an article in French media, in Le Figaro, caring for the spirit that guided the establishment of China-French diplomatic relations and working together toward global peace and development. So he published this whole article in the media as a sign of good gestures, talking about the need for increased collaboration on issues like the Middle East, on Ukraine, and of course, together bilaterally to strengthen relations. And really not controversial stuff here. But through all of that embarrassment, through all of that attempts, right, all these attempts to denigrate Xi Jinping, even in France, to make it seem like there were no concessions other than cognac. I mean, here's that story from Politico. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Macron's cognac, the only thing that went down smoothly with Xi. Xi Jinping handed Emmanuel Macron some wins during his state visit, but offered few meaningful concessions on trade and Ukraine. He presented him with a highly symbolic gifts. Xi Jinping did several bottles of France's most exquisite cognacs. It was not a subtle hint. China's anti-dumping investigation to European wine-based liquors, largely targeting France's cognac producers, is seen as retaliation for the EU's decision to open several investigations against Beijing on suspicion of unfair trade practices in sectors such as electric vehicles and medical device manufacturing. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. It's just Europe shooting itself in the foot. But nonetheless, Xi Jinping was offering his sweeteners, a promise not to slap preemptive tariffs on French brandies and support Macron's Olympic truce. But unlike Macron's liquors, Xi's offerings may not go down quite as well. During the Chinese leader's 2-day visit that kicked off, so this was Monday in the first week of May, Macron had hoped to soften Beijing's stance on several key issues, including trade imbalances and its no-limits partnership with Russia. What Macron got was a tin-eared Xi who denied there were any problems, offered modest concessions that required very little sacrifice on China's part, or outright misrepresented China's involvement in Russia's war in Ukraine. So essentially, the Western mainstream media, NATO, Europe, the United States, they viewed this visit as nothing more than a potential opportunity to get concessions from China. An absolutely ridiculous position given that Europe and the United States are in no position to try to get concessions from China. China is the economy that's growing at 5% plus this year. China's economy is looking great with high tech electric vehicles, all these things, this overcapacity that they're talking about is actually an admission that China's economy is doing quite well. Its manufacturing sector is actually moving forward while demand is down inside of China. China has rectified a lot of imbalances and is moving forward quite nicely with a lot of confidence, and its position on the world stage has only grown stronger. And this trip actually showed that, because while the Financial Times are saying this is so unproductive, while the Politico is complaining that China did not give any concessions to Macron, here is what China and France did. They inked many deals on the sidelines of the visit. So here were the main contracts: an agreement to set up a global strategic partnership in the battery industry between Xiamen Tungsten New Energy and Arano, memorandum of understanding between Envision and Suez, supply contracts for electric traction systems between the Alstom company, the French company, and the new United Group for metro lines in Beijing and Wuhan. 3 partnership projects between EDF and SPIC, namely hydrogen production, installation of photovoltaic panels in Saudi Arabia, and maintenance of low consumption public lighting in Wuhan. Memorandum of understanding between Fives and Envision for cooperation in the assembly of battery cells in France. Supply contract for the electric traction system of Line 8 of the Hefei Metro between Alstom and CRRC. That's a China Railway Corporation. Contract between the city of Dongguan and Suez for the incineration of municipal sludge. Renewal of the strategic memorandum of understanding between the Bank of China and Credit Agricole. Support contract still under discussion. So we can go on and on and on. All right. Commitment of EDF and China General Nuclear Power Group on the continuation expansion of cooperation. And of course, I said the contract still under discussion between Safran Helicopter Engines and the private country General Dynamic Aerotechnology. So deals. Okay. That's what China was really wanting to meet about. That's what they met about. And that's what happened. Now, this visit was not as important to China, believe it or not, as the other visits, especially the Serbia visit. And this is what is such a game changer. And this is why the collective West cannot stand when Xi Jinping and China asserts the diplomatic power, the influence that it has, because it is one that does not prioritize the collective West. Xi Jinping does not have a stopwatch when he meets with Serbia's president, Alexander Vučić. No, actually, we're going to see what happened with Serbia. Let's just start with the big one. All right. The big announcement that was that China and Serbia decide to build a community with a shared future. This is an elevation of the strategic partnership to the highest level between China and Serbia. Let's read what that's all about. So China and Serbia have decided on Wednesday, so this is the Wednesday of the first week of May, or into the second week of May, to build a community with a shared future and upgrade of their relations from a comprehensive strategic partnership established 8 years ago. The decision was declared by visiting Chinese President Xi Jinping and his counterpart, Alexander Vučić, during their meeting in the Serbian capital. Xi stressed that ironclad friendship between China and Serbia has stood the test of changing international landscape, saying that such friendship is characterized by profound historical roots, solid political foundation, extensive common interests, and strong popular support. Xi said over the past several years, under the leadership of him and Vučić, the bilateral relationship has leapfrogged with historic progress since the establishment of the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership in 2016. The bilateral relationship has been enriched in substance and scope and has become an exemplar for China's friendly relations with other European countries. China stands shoulder to shoulder with Serbia, share weal and woe like passengers in the same boat, carry forward the spirit of the ironclad friendship, maintain and grow their friendship, and jointly safeguard fundamental long-term interests of the two countries. Do you hear these words being uttered with France? No, you did not hear these words being uttered when it comes to France. Basically, what you had with France was Xi Jinping saying, look, get on the right path, treat China like an equal, and we need to essentially be the example of what it means to be frenemies, to be friends and adversaries at the same time. China was not messing around, and I can prove that. through the article that Xi Jinping wrote in French media. Okay, I'll actually pull that back up in a second after we get to some of these terms, because it shows the great contrast here. Okay, so the China-Serbia community with a shared future of the new era, Xi said, is an upgrade from the ironclad friendship between China and Serbia, adding it represents common values and objectives, the pursuit of joint development, win-win cooperation, and mutual success. The China-Serbia community with a shared future in the new era, the two sides are going to keep deepening and expanding high-quality Belt and Road cooperation and collaboration between China and Central Asian and Eastern European countries, contributing to their respective modernization. The Chinese leader called on two sides to highlight the strategic nature of the bilateral partnership, keep its general direction, saying that China supports Serbia in upholding independence, pursuing a development path suited to its own national conditions, and supports its effort of safeguarding national sovereignty and territorial integrity. So here are some of the things that they're going to firm up, okay, because they're talking about Belt and Road. So they're going to steadily advance cooperation. So the China-Serbia Free Trade Agreement is set to take effect in July 1st of this year. So that's one of the big deals made here. The high standard mutual opening up between China and Serbia will enter a new stage. The Chinese side is also going to invite 300 young Serbians to China on study and exchange programs in the next 3 years. Adding, China welcomes the opening of direct flights from Belgrade and Shanghai by the Serbian side so as to comprehensively deepen people-to-people exchanges. Xi also called for opening up new prospects of cooperation and innovation in bilateral relations and making innovation cooperation the new growth driver in the relationship. China is going to support 50 young Serbian scientists in taking part in scientific research exchanges in China over the next 3 years, adding China is ready to work with Serbia to strengthen cooperation in AI and endeavor to ensure humanity properly develops and utilizes AI. It is important for China and Serbia to reject hegemonism and power politics, oppose bloc politics and confrontation, adding that the two sides are going to join hands and uphold purposes and principles of the UN Charter. So that is just some of what's happening here. You see the scenes. I mean, this is just different, right? This is just a different vibe and environment in Serbia. Okay. The hero's welcome from Xi Jinping. No timer on the table here. Look at the reception, the roses. Okay, this is just a lot different. They are elevating their ties to the highest level, meaning increased development. I mean, these are just photos, and just the fact that Chinese media is extensively emphasizing Serbia just goes to show what it all means. Okay, and here's Hua Chunying, the spokesperson of the foreign ministry. She gave some bullet points about what this means of the China-Serbia Free Trade Agreement. The China-Serbia community with a shared future in the new era. Hua Chunying said, these are the points. The Free Trade Agreement taking part in July 1st, hosting the Specialized Expo in 2027. Chinese businesses will be encouraged to take part in the relevant construction projects. China will import high-quality agricultural specialties from Serbia. 50 young Serbian scientists, as the article said, will be going to China for exchange programs in the next 3 years. China is going to invite 300 young Serbians to study in China in the next 3 years, and China welcomes the opening of direct flights. So major cooperation, major deals, and they emphasize much more than just business ties, okay? Because this was a lot more than just business. This was about politics when it comes to the China-Serbia relationship. It was about rejecting great power confrontation. It was about rejecting the empire, rejecting the joint adversary that they have, which is U.S. and NATO hegemonism. That's why they met on May 7th of this year, because May 7th of 1999 was when the NATO bloc bombed the embassy, the Chinese embassy in Belgrade, and killed 3 Chinese nationals. Here you have Li Jingjing, friend of the show. Wow, thank you so much, Serbia, for this incredible welcome. Look at this ironclad friendship. Look at this photo. I mean, just absolute pandemonium and excitement for China. Okay, and then you had many political statements. First, let's listen to what Xi Jinping had to say during a meeting with Vucic. Okay, here it is. Here's DD Geopolitics again doing the great reporting. Definitely follow DD Geopolitics. President of the People's Republic of China during a meeting with the President of the Republic of Serbia. Let's listen to it.
Dragi prijatelju,
So I'm gonna read it, okay? So, Mr. President Vucic, dear friend, I am very happy to be here in your beautiful country. Let me just put it on mute, actually. Mr. President, you greeted me at the airport. Actually, let's just read the quote, okay? Because here he says, my wife and I were deeply touched by the kindness and friendship of your people, and I especially feel that you, Excellency, have made a significant personal contribution to my visit. I vividly remember my previous visits, and this time the arrangements you have prepared really show our relations are at a high level and demonstrate how deep our friendship is. In China, we always say we are deeply impressed by the kindness of our friend. We are signing more than 29 agreements. We are signing more than 29 agreements with China, a significant investment. The first part is a free trade agreement with China come into effect on July 1st. There are 3 phases of the agreement. It's implementation over the next 15 years, with the first phase now on July 1st, the next in the 5 years, and the final phase in 10 years. So then you had Vucic, okay? So you have Xi Jinping talking about just how appreciative he was for Serbia's welcome. I mean, these are all messages, right? This is more than just inking deals. This is about politics, okay? This is about expressing what's really important here. Here you have another message, okay? Here's Vucic talking about Taiwan is China. So this is the politics part, right? This is the politics. Let's listen to Vucic here, all right?
Mnogo više. Oni su naši iskreni prijatelji. I kao što mi imamo jasne i jednostavne stavove po pitanju kineskog teritorijalnog integriteta i zato uvek i na svakom mestu kažemo da, Tajvan je Kina, da, to piše u Povelji Ujedinjenih nacija, tako i oni podržavaju teritorijalni integritet Srbije bez ikakvih.
Look at the smile and look at the claps from Xi Jinping. I mean, this is far more informal than you will see major world leaders behave. I mean, this is excitement. This is solidarity. This is an expression that Serbia and China are truly together building a community for a shared future. So here, let's just finish what he has to say.
I tako su uvek sa nama u svim najtežim trenucima. Ne zaboravite da su naši kineski prijatelji bili sa nama i pre 25 godina kada je ova zemlja bila rušena i bombardovana, da su zajedno sa nama platili visoku cenu, izgubili ljude samo nekoliko stotina metara odavde. Baš na današnji dan. I hoću da kažem veliko hvala predsjedniku Siju, jer sve ovo što smo izgradili u Beogradu, a samo deo toga je on mogao da vidi noćas i jutros, izgradili smo i zahvaljujući jačoj privredi srpskoj, zahvaljujući njegovoj podršci za našu železaru, za naš rudnik u Boru, za mnoge privatne investicije koje dolaze u našu zemlju i još mnogo toga možemo i moramo da uradimo zajednički.
So, I mean, there you have it, okay? Don't forget that our Chinese friends were here with us 25 years ago when this country was destroyed and bombed. They paid a high price together with us and lost people just a few hundred meters from where we are speaking, making a strong statement on the territorial integrity of China, saying that Taiwan is China. Incredible. So lastly, Xi Jinping ended the tour in Hungary, where he met with Viktor Orban, another maligned leader of Europe. Here is what happened. This is Sputnik reporting on the results of the talks. What did China and Hungary's leader agree on? The Chinese leader praised Beijing-Budapest relationship, which he stressed is at the best in its history and has embarked on a golden voyage. President Xi Jinping and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban held talks in Budapest as part of the Chinese leader's last stop on his 5-day European tour. It saw the sides ink 18 new agreements to deepen bilateral economic and cultural cooperation, including accords on nuclear energy, investment, and tourism. Xi told reporters that after the talks, Beijing and Budapest have agreed to elevate bilateral relations to an all-weather comprehensive partnership for a new era. So, That means that relations between China and Hungary are even better now than they were prior to this visit. So Serbia gets the highest promotion and rank in China's diplomatic relations with other nations, community for a shared future, because that is China's overall goal. And to say that another country is walking with you hand in hand in that goal is the highest level. All weather partnership is a next level down. Then it's comprehensive strategic partnership. Then it's just strategic partnership, and then it's just bilateral relations or whatever. So here you have all-weather partnership between Hungary and China established in this meeting. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Hungary, ushering in a new and important opportunity for the development of bilateral relations, said Xi Jinping. He added that during Thursday's talks, Orban in particular agreed to that China's Belt and Road Initiative is highly consistent with Hungary's strategic opening to the east. She signaled Beijing's readiness to forge greater synergy and development strategies with Hungary, make good use of mechanisms such as the China-Hungary Intergovernmental China Belt and Governmental Belt and Road Cooperation Committee, as well as actively expand cooperation in emerging areas such as clean energy and artificial intelligence. I want to say a note on artificial intelligence. The reason why that keeps coming up is because China, unlike the United States and the West, has been very careful to only implement, discuss, and talk about AI in the context of business and government activity. There is no consumer AI right now. Why? Because China does not believe it has a good grasp on what is necessary in terms of regulations to ensure that people are protected from some of the malign things that happen that companies, private individuals, can do with AI. So they're heavily regulating it, and it's only discussed in the context of economic relationships, business between within China and between partners. That is where it is staying for now. So the Chinese president also expressed hope that Hungary, which is to hold a rotating EU presidency in the second half of this year, will play an active role in promoting healthy and stable development of China EU relations. The prime minister recalled that Chinese investment was so small in Hungary 20 years ago that it was a magnifying glass was needed to find it. However, last year, 3/4 of all foreign investment in Hungary was by China, adding to help provide jobs for tens of thousands of Hungarians. That's just mind blowing. That's mind blowing. That's mind blowing. 3/4 of all foreign investment in Hungary is Chinese. Incredible. Does this look like a collapsing economy? If it was collapsing, the whole world economy and first the global majority economies would be collapsing one by one because of China's economic collapse. That's not happening because China is not collapsing. China is forging ahead. No self-respecting country in economic crisis forges ahead with deeper relations and partnerships and investments in other countries. That's not how it works. Anyway, I'd like to assure the president that Hungary will continue to provide fair conditions for Chinese companies investing in our country, and that we will create the opportunity for the most modern Western and most modern Eastern technologies and build cooperation in Hungary. The Xi-Orban talks came shortly after the Chinese leader lauded the two countries' longstanding friendship that he described as mellow and rich as Tokaji wine in an op-ed published in Hungary's Magyar Nemzet daily, and nod to the world-famous Hungarian vineyards. We have gone through hardships together and defied power politics together amid volatile international situations, adding that China looks forward to working closely with Hungarian friends. So notice how different that tone is than this. I'm just going to close this segment on Xi Jinping's editorial. So it's kind of full circle here to the French media. And I want to go all the way to the final remarks, okay, that he gives in the last paragraph. Confucius observed that a man of true moral integrity is one who is both friendly but independent, and who does not compromise his principles, and who is independent without any bias or taking sides. How unflinchingly firm he is in his strength. End quote. French writer Romain Rolland said that it is so much easier to allow oneself to be guided than it is to think for oneself. This abdication is the kernel of mischief. Both China and France value independence as two major countries. Our interactions in the long course of history have released tremendous energy, swaying the trajectory of the world. Now we are standing at another historical starting point. Let us join hands together on this new journey toward greater progress in China-France relations to the benefit of our two countries and the world. So you might think, oh, that's a nice statement. But those two quotes are all a message to Macron and to Europe and to the United States, or at least to Europe, but through France to the EU, saying, stop being a vassal of the United States. Stop being such a tool, a dog being dragged around by an abusive owner. Stop it. That is what China was saying there. And of course, China does it diplomatically. China sends messages in ways that both affirm principles, but have absolutely no hostility or animus. It's not about animus or hostility. It's about sending the correct message and showing that China stands tall in these situations, should be treated like an equal, but more importantly, has a very stark principle that doesn't have to be communicated to Serbia or Hungary. That's why China chose these countries, because on the one side, you have these two eastern flank countries in Eastern Europe that have been maligned by the collective West, who have deep relationships with China, strong, friendly, not characterized by aggression at all. And then you have France, the worn down poodle of the European Union. Once again, Macron inviting Ursula von der Leyen to be his attack dog because she is just so rabidly anti-China. I don't even know what really goes on upstairs for that oligarch, unelected oligarch. But nonetheless, different tone here, different tone used. As you can tell, there's not a lot of love lost when it comes to the relationship between China and France. China was attempting to get relations back on the right track. And of course, business will continue to happen because France really needs it. France cannot afford to continue to shoot itself in the foot as it has with Russia. And so that is the contrast here. That is the message China sent. China said, we are moving when it comes to Europe in the direction of building the multipolar world, standing with the global majority, being that anchor economically as well as politically and diplomatically. In France and the EU better hop on the train or essentially be incinerated by that which is preventing you from hopping on the train, which is the United States. The United States is the abusive owner. It is the abusive handler. It is the abusive partner to Europe. It's not a partner. It is the master. And that is what China was warning against with Macron. But of course, we cannot believe or think that Macron in Europe is going to steer itself in the right direction without massive political changes. So China just did a major checkmate in Europe. What an impressive tour, and what a signal of hope in a time where you have a Gaza genocide, where you have the world on fire because of the United States, because of Israel, because of NATO, because of the European collective West decaying so-called civilization. We have a moment where China is really pushing forward a trajectory that is just so impressive politically, economically, and diplomatically that you have to acknowledge it. You have to talk about it, and you have to cover it. And that's what we just did right here. China's on the rise. It is not collapsing. And Europe just got a huge message in so many ways of that fact. All right, my message for you guys to stick around actually worked. We still got 4,000 people here. All right, that was great. That was fun. I really was actually looking forward to this stream tonight because these stories actually, in a world where there's a lot of hopelessness and I think a lot of despair about what's happening in Palestine, I thought today, after covering Palestine so deeply with Richard Medhurst live, please do check that out after you're done here. You can catch that replay. It's time to I wanted to cover these developments that are happening in real time in other parts of the world. But of course, all eyes on Rafah, all eyes on Gaza still. And we'll definitely be back with much coverage of that in future streams. But nonetheless, that's it for the stories. Let me give you some announcements while you're still here. Stick around. Announcements. Here we go. We have many guests coming up. We have Dmitry Polanski on the 15th of May. He will be here for about 30 to 40 minutes on the 15th of May. We are going to talk about Russia's role in the world, diplomacy, Ukraine, so much more. He's a great guy. He is the representative, the permanent representative at the United Nations for Russia. He's been on other programs. I've met him in person when I spoke at the UN Security Council. Really enjoyed his company. He was very helpful and a very nice guy. And also just politically, like he knows his stuff. You ever listen to him at the United Nations, you know this. So be there, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We will start that conversation. On the 20th, I have an amazing roundtable with both Glenn Deason, who I've not yet collaborated with. He is a scholar. He's a geopolitical analyst and so many other things. Has written a book on Eurasia, which is a great contribution. He will be joined with the Duran on my channel. We are going to do a roundtable, of course, on all things multipolar world, Ukraine, etc. That will be 1 p.m. Eastern, I believe, on the 20th of Monday of May. And then on the 22nd, Scott Ritter returns to the program at 8:30 p.m. Eastern to do a full gambit of all these things that are developing in Ukraine and beyond. And for now, that's it. That's enough, right? There's a lot coming up here on this program. There will be many more as well as we enter in to a mid-June period where I will be away from streaming for another couple weeks. I'm actually taking a vacation with my wife, not a business trip like I have been going on the last few times. This time we're going away on vacation. I will not be streaming during that time. I will definitely be publishing clips as much as I can during that June period while I'm gone. So it'll be about mid-June to early July. And then I'll be back in July. So, yeah. And of course, I'll be working on many more things as well. Another announcement, too, is I am deepening a partnership with Beijing Review. I already have a partnership with CGTN, and that's great. However, Beijing Review has been asking for, so I'll be posting more on my Substack. I do hope that you can subscribe for free or paid on Substack. I'll put that in the chat right now, my Substack, because I'll be publishing my Beijing Review articles there as well. I'll be publishing more with them. They've been asking me for articles lately on Gaza. So if you want my perspective on Gaza, I have an analysis on why young Americans support Gaza in the wake of the student protests. That's up now. And then I am also going to have published an article on the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act that was recently passed by the House in the United States, what it all means, and what is the global context for that bill. What does it say about the United States? Okay, there's going to be a lot of good analysis of the role of AIPAC and its influence. Maybe some of you don't know that Joe Biden historically has been the biggest recipient of AIPAC and Israel lobby donations over the course of their history in influencing U.S. politics. And he's the president of the United States. So shouldn't be shocking that the United States is so committed to Israel's genocidal onslaught in Gaza. Nonetheless, you will see more articles from me. So I'll be back to writing, which means there may be a little bit less of the video streaming, but nonetheless, it will continue. This channel will go on, but definitely keep abreast. Subscribe to my Substack. It's also in the video description as well. And I love writing. I mean, I wrote for many, many years before I became more full-time on YouTube, or at least more part-time on YouTube, and giving more time to video programming. So there'll be a lot more to come. Do stay tuned for what we have in store here on this program because I've been working hard since I got back from China to talk about or to work on programming for the show and to continue to develop unique shows and guests and whatnot. With all that said, though, okay, we are entering toward the end. Let me do some shout outs before I go. First, shout out to all the oh man, I closed it. I need to actually get back into, hold on one second. I want to shout out to all the moderators who are here. I'm going to shout your names out very soon. StreamYards, the way StreamYard works, it's not as good. So I gotta go to the analytics here. The little booth they give us. Let's see. So we have here Standing Alone, Connie Reed. Who else do we have here? Where Pilgrim. We have, okay, so we had a pretty good showing. Anyone else? Then I think I saw Desert Mantis. I think I saw is Joe WS here? Usually is, but if you're not, that's okay. So thank you to all the moderators. I wish that I could oh, here we go. I guess I can see more. So yeah, I don't see Desert Mantis or any others. I see Nadia here in the chat as a member, where I know you are a member as well. Okay. So thanks so much for your membership. I want to shout out, so you can become a YouTube member by hitting the join button on the video under the, by the video title of this stream. I'm just going to give a plug to please support me on Patreon annually or monthly. That is the best way to support this work. You can suggest guests, send me a message, ask me questions. You can also get a free PDF copy of my book on American exceptionalism that was published in 2019, and so much more. So please do subscribe on Patreon monthly or annually. Most people like annually best. You can also subscribe annually or monthly on Substack. You can get the archive of my former articles. You can also be on the lookout for articles there that I'll be sharing from Beijing Review. You can follow Beijing Review, but my Substack will likely be a much more it's easier and more consolidated place to catch my articles because it's an online magazine, so they don't really promote. I mean, it's not an online magazine, it's a magazine, so they're not really promoting so much online. So that's why I'll be publishing them on Substack as well. And then what else? Who else am I shouting out here? Oh, anyone. Oh, super chats coming. But of course, anyone who's been contributing on PayPal or Buy Me a Coffee, thank you so much. I want to just shout out first to also Rumble community. Thanks so much for supporting me on Rumble. And Rockfin community, thanks so much. I saw Bob Baker give a tip. I don't know on Rumble if anybody's given financially. It doesn't look like, but all of you are valued nonetheless. Let us now look at the super chats. There were about 6. Here we go. We have Conan. Thank you so much for the super sticker. ZZYZX. Thank you for being a member as well. Government cues are evil. Okay. Sonny Robinson said, talk about Australia invading China airspace, then blaming China like it's their fault. Exactly. It's ridiculous. Thanks so much, Sonny, for that. ZZYZX said Biden sent all our enemies here and paid them. Not sure what that means, ZZYZX, or what you're referring to, but thank you. Thank you so much. Nadia, thanks for becoming a member again. Were you ever a member? Or, I mean, you've been supporting this channel since I feel like the beginning. So just want to shout you out for being such a long time viewer. We have a few who have stayed since basically my beginnings. Nadia says, will World War III escalate with Russia's huge new oil and gas find near the Antarctic Peninsula yesterday, especially given its inheritance of the USSR's right to make new territorial claims in the Antarctic Treaty? Well, Nadia, very good question. Thank you so much for the super chat. This is a very good question. Of course, World War III is going to escalate in all of these arenas. We've seen the United States, both with China and Russia, make a lot of hay about the Antarctic. We know that the United States does not want to see any development there that is not its own. So, indeed, we are definitely going to see more aggression when it comes to this arena. I don't know if it'll be a primary flashpoint. I believe that the United States is more so looking at the territories that border Russia. It is looking at consolidating NATO's position more so than this, but it will definitely be on the agenda because we know that when it comes to China and Russia too, that the battle in the sea, the battle in the seas that outlie Russia and China is a big part of how the United States is going to wage war, especially against China. That's why you have the Marines training across the first island chain. That's why you have the Philippines constantly coming up. And of course, the United States is economically in just complete and utter desperation. It is stagnating. It doesn't have the productive capacity. It doesn't have the innovation. The reasons for this is because it's controlled by monopolies that absolutely have no interest in any of this. It is completely financialized and it is overburdened by debts, by overproduction, by glut. I mean, this is really the end stage of a monopoly capitalist imperialist system. And now there are some who are more libertarian minded or more free market minded who would say that's absolutely ridiculous. It's not capitalism, but the United States' style of capitalism has developed. It is the only system under a capitalist economic regime which has undergone the apex of what it means to be an empire. The European empires all fell to the United States. They all declined. They were all weakened. They all decayed in the context of another emerging capitalist power, the United States. This is just the facts. And now the United States is declining and failing and falling in the context where unlike what we heard in the 1990s from people like Francis Fukuyama, there is no alternative to the United States' unipolar world, neoliberal capitalist world order. We're actually seeing the opposite be true, that there truly is no other option for the United States. It cannot continue to revert into what it already is. It's either going to transform dramatically or its political economy is going to be supplanted and it will eventually become either a completely irrelevant uh, economic system, outmoded, or it will die, or it will try to kill everyone. I believe that the United States elites, they would much rather just destroy humanity than to let go of what it had stolen from everybody, what it had stolen from the global majority. So that will be the ultimate test, I believe, of for humanity as a whole, but especially the multipolar world. How does it stand up to a belligerent dying empire? And I believe, of course, the Antarctic region, every part of this world is going to be part of that. I mean, we're seeing it in Gaza right now. That's a big part of this. The reason why the United States cannot get its head out of Israel's you know what is because the United States cannot imagine what life would be like if Israel has to either change dramatically its policy or go away, because ultimately the controversy around Israel's very existence as a colonial entity is in question now for perhaps the first time in such a massive way in the collective West in its history. I mean, we've had other moments where, of course, Israel, all the time, it goes through these moments of just these atrocities that people then start to question, well, what's next here? Two states, one state. Oh, is Iran saying wipe it off the map? All of this nonsense. But the fact remains is that the reason why Israel is under this controversial lens all the time is because of what it does, its policies, and its ultimate role in the region that the United States stokes, supports, and elevates because they view themselves as having enormously unifying interests. And that is what I wrote in my article in Beijing Review that's going to be coming out in about a week or so. I wrote about how the United States and Israel, it is not simply just about influence. It's not just that Israel gives money to Congress, and so Congress and the president or whoever does what Israel wants. It's about the United States elites and Israel both seeing themselves, Israel's political establishment, both seeing themselves as having unified interests in a myriad of endeavors, whether it's the NATO invasion of Libya, the ongoing dirty war on Syria, the destruction of the axis of resistance as a whole, or especially Iran. We can go on and on and on. The United States, of course, the Palestinian people, who are they to the United States? They're nothing but expendable people. They don't even view, I mean, the United States at least don't even view Palestinians as people. But to me, they're just expendable people according in the eyes of the US elites. So what this means is that the United States is more than willing to shack up with Israel every single possible moment to ensure that the United States has a foothold in the region. What did Joe Biden say in 1986 about Israel? He said that if Israel did not exist, the United States would have to invent one to protect her interests in the region. What that meant was that Israel is incredibly valuable to um, the United States, and that if Israel did not exist, the United States would have to create one. So that is what we are dealing with. That is the reality. And so that means that at every flashpoint in the world, there's this risk of World War III, because in every flashpoint in the world, in every conflict zone, there's always this bigger picture that the United States' elites are looking toward, which is an end game for how its empire is going to survive. There is no other force in the world than the ruling elite of the United States that understands better that its time is up. So that's why you have Ukraine. That's why you have Gaza. That's why you have Taiwan. That's why you still have the Middle East on fire in so many different places. You have this occupation of Syria. Look at what's happening on the African continent, the militarization, and then you have, of course, the huge fight back in places like Mali, like Burkina Faso, like Niger. I mean, we can go on and on and on, but the reason why all of this is happening, you can go to Latin America and view the same thing. The attempts to regime change Maduro, to undermine Lula, to overthrow Cuba, to attempt to militarize the rest of the Middle East, like Ecuador, to use Colombia as like an Israel of Latin America. To I can go on and on and on. But the point is that it's all about the U.S. preventing its dying hegemony from closing that coffin. The door simply has not been shut yet. And that is what we are dealing with. We are dealing with a dying empire. The coffin door isn't shut. It needs to be shut. But the world right now cannot quite shut it because there is this powerful nuclear possibility. There's this powerful, and I mean, I call it powerful. Well, we've seen how actually weak the U.S. military and its allies really are when they have to actually fight. But the danger of mass casualties, of instability, of chaos, which the United States is actually quite good at imposing on the world, and of course that nuclear option, which the United States is the only government historically to actually pull the trigger on that. All of that means is that the multipolar world is still walking on eggshells. I mean, in many cases, the genocide of Gaza, what's happening in Ukraine, all of these are signals to the multipolar world that while it is in birth, while China and Russia are on the rise, while they certainly cannot be defeated by the empire, and while their projects are only going to continue to advance, the US will continue to be isolated. It has to continue to develop in this methodical way. It's not about a confrontation, it's not about an all-out war, because there's no leaders in the world right now than Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Raisi in Iran, and many others, Bashar al-Assad, Nicolas Maduro. All of these leaders have one thing that they all understand together, is that the United States cannot be trusted to not do the unthinkable. Israel and Ukraine are big examples of that. That's why the whole world is moving toward the multipolar world, saying, let us get out of the possibility that we will be under the thumb of this batshit regime. But the reality is that regime is still batshit. And so you still have to walk in the world with that reality, with that regime constantly looking for any reason to do the unthinkable. And so that's why whenever we have these feelings about why isn't more happening around Gaza? Why doesn't Russia just end it with Ukraine? Why does it all of this, right? Have all these opinions and feelings, and they're not invalid. Don't want to invalidate any feelings here, but we have to prioritize the facts after we validate the feelings, if that makes sense. We cannot move based on those feelings, because if we do, then we run the risk of ignoring reality. And when we ignore reality, bad things tend to happen. Like we tend to start to put our sights on to those who are not to blame for the particular situation, because we feel powerless to stop what is actually responsible, which is the United States and its crass and bankrupt elite, which understands they're in crisis, but cannot, without literally relinquishing not just power, but a good amount of it, not just some of it, but a good amount of power, to stop the chaos, to be part of a stable world, to be part of a multipolar world, to be part of a more democratic world, to be part of a more just world, a more fair world. All of that is going to require the United States elite to be either willing to give up what it has held on to so violently, or they're going to have to be defeated. They're going to have to be defeated, like NATO is being defeated in Ukraine, like the Axis of Resistance is defeating Israel over this long course. It's going to have to be defeated. And so that is what Europeans, ordinary people in the United States, that's what's going to have to be figured out. How do you get to that point of a just and true victory over this kind of just utter calamity? So anyway, you got me going, Nadia, and I did that because yeah, you just got me going. You got me going. Blocking China from the Northeast Passage along Siberia's coast and Russia's North Polar claim from Lomonosov Ridge are big naval war factors too. Yeah. I mean, it's all about cutting them off. I mean, it's all about isolating them, keeping. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous to even think you can do this without massively overextending yourself. It's ridiculous, and it would have huge economic consequences. So here we have another. So thank you, Nadia. Thank you so much again. Good on you, Danny. Says Ristos Sarek. Oh man, I'm sorry. I just gotta say, I apologize for not being able to pronounce your name, because I'm a basic English speaker. So Ristos Sarakagias. Sarakahagias. Not sure where that accent's coming out from or what that's supposed to be coming out of my mouth, but thank you so much for your generosity. With that said, everyone, we got some spammer in Rumble. Very weird. Jesus Warrior. I'm gonna just forever boot you. So Jesus Warrior, you can fart outside of the chat now. On Rumble. Yes. So First Amendment said it's Greek. Yeah. No, I mean, I kind of assumed it was Greek, a Greek name, but in terms of what was coming out of my mouth, the accent, I don't know. Don't even ask. So, all right, everybody. That's it for me. All right. It was a long stream, good stream. Appreciate it. We are out of here. Thank you so much, everybody. Be sure to catch me on the 15th with Mr. Dmitry Polansky. All right. It'll be a great conversation. 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, May 15th. That'll be the next stream. And as I said before, the 20th, the Duran and Glenn Deason come for a roundtable. Should be really fun. 1 p.m. Eastern, May 20th. May 22nd, we have Mr. Scott Ritter back on. And then, of course, there'll be more coming before I head out for vacation. All right, everybody, take good care. Be sure before you leave here, hit that like button, hit that notifications bell, hit that subscribe button. And of course, please do support this channel. Patreon.com/DannyHaiFong. Go to there, subscribe annually or monthly. I got another super sticker here. Thanks so much to you, Cognite. Then I see Desert Mantis. I see you again. Thanks so much for being a moderator. Substack, annually or monthly. You buy me a coffee. You can PayPal. You can become a YouTube member. All of it is very much appreciated. And of course, I want to give a special shout out to those whose content that I shared today. We had GD Geopolitics come up quite frequently. They are actually great collaborators in this work. So please do follow them on YouTube, DD Geopolitics. You can also find them on Twitter and Telegram. Also, and we have another super sticker here. Thanks so much, of course, always to all the diligent work of Scott Ritter. He will be back on the 22nd, as I said, but I often do use his analysis because he's doing some great reporting on Russia right now, and he is someone who's a great friend of the show. So do follow him at scottritterextra.com. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for all of your support. Another super sticker from Ristos. Thank you so much for your super sticker. All right, everybody, I'm out of here. Take good care. I will see you all again soon.